What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. And we got to address the elefante in the room. If you're watching this on YouTube, you notice a slight difference as far as our setup goes.
Well, you know, it's a slight difference in the channel. We don't even have the same channel anymore.
Yeah, that kind of happened.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody who was subscribed to SK+. Hello, listeners of the Collider Podcast. This is new for us.
This is absolutely new,
New house.
But for anyone who's listening, it's still pretty much the same.
Yeah, Stone smells no feet.
Here in studio, and by in studio, I mean my studio.
Right.
My house, my apartment, my little tiny apartment. It's a different setup. I am now looking at the beautiful face of RB3.
Oh, man. What a face to look at.
And I don't have to turn my head.
And we're going to have to break each other's necks.
We're going to break necks and set up microphones in different ways to make it more comfortable for us. Yeah. We don't have the squeaky table anymore.
Yeah, no squeaky table. We can actually use this to... We should probably not hit the table because it makes a noise, but... we have a good table now.
We actually have a table.
We have a round table, and this gives us the opportunity, for guests.
This gives us the opportunity for guests, which is something we want to introduce into the Meaning of Podcast. I know it's something that I've always wanted, and unfortunately, it's not been possible, like actually physically possible. Yeah. But now that I have this table, and we'll probably find another mic, let's do it, man. Let's start bringing in guests.
Yeah,
let's do it.
And we're
talk
still
about directors.
We're still shifting up the format a little bit too. So
yeah, we're gonna switch things up. We're gonna make it more appealing to your ears, and as far as appealing to your eyes, we're trying. We're trying, guys.
Yeah.
Anyone who's on YouTube right now, we're trying.
Yeah, we're gonna go at it.
But either way, guys, this episode we're talking about possibly the most famous female director in Hollywood, and that's Kathryn Bigelow. I also want to say she's one of the most accomplished directors, regardless of the fact that she's female, just accomplished directors, period.
Yeah.
Like, she's one of the most accomplished directors working in Hollywood today, and that's a huge reason why we're doing Kathryn Bigelow today, and it's going to be a fun, interesting discussion on her films, because she has great variety in her films. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely has a earlier action kind of tone, shifting into a more military type of vibe, so I have a lot to talk about. I have a lot of notes. I probably have like a good this is the most notes I probably brought in since like Denis Villeneuve. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So we got a lot to talk about on this one.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, I can't wait. But first, guys, we're gonna read your comments from last week's episode where we talked about J.J. Abrams. And yeah, you guys were pretty supportive of that episode, I believe. I don't know if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, I don't really read the comments, but usually when you pop them out to me here, this is the first time hearing them.
Yeah, and you don't have the fresh meter anymore, so we
I don't have the fresh rotten. I should bring that back. That was good. That was a good time.
Yeah.
Did I use that last week?
No, you used it 2 weeks ago.
All right. I'm gonna bring it back.
First comment I'm going to read is Oscar Leon says Sasha Lane is the actress from American Honey, and she is amazing. Great episode yet again.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah,
we couldn't think of her name.
Yeah, Sasha Lane. That was your name.
Sasha Lane.
Yeah.
That's a solid name.
Right.
That's gonna stick in your head.
Does it spell like Sasha? Like what kind of?
Yeah, it's spelled like Sasha.
Okay.
There's a lot of fun comments talking about the title as far as the change of the podcast channel.
Oh, right.
It's now Collider
Podcast. Yeah.
Gunslinger 199 says pumpkin spice latte. LOL. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing, but I call J.J. Abrams the pumpkin spice latte of directors.
Oh, that's right. You're just hating, man.
Am I hating? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of okay. It's kind of bad. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, man.
Nah,
that's
all. Kidding, man. Nah, pumpkin spice latte is good stuff, people. I don't drink coffee, but.
Hayden Gonzalez says, I listen to you guys on the podcast mainly, but going to begin watching this channel to show my support. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for watching the channel after we switched up. After we, now that we have there's a new batch of subscribers I noticed to the Collider Podcast.
Yeah.
Deal. So thank you guys, new subscribers. Hope you're watching. We're the only ones left out of the original OG besides Schmo Down Rundown, man. We're just in the valley.
I mean, we're kind of like in the middle too, which is kind of funny, but I still think the Collider Podcast can make great content. Like I just checked out the Witching Hour, with Perry and Haley talking about horror type stuff. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
The one-on-one joint with Christian.
The one-on-ones there with Christian.
They're good. They're good ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be a fun time to see our new home for the Meaning of Podcast, which is, something that we value very much in our hearts. Now let's jump over to Kathryn Bigelow. Once again, guys, I started out by saying she's one of the most famous female directors. Is she the first female director we've done on this podcast?
We did Ava DuVernay.
That's right. We did Ava. Yeah. That's another thing, right? I think Ava is probably more popular. I don't know if you would agree with
as
that.
of right now, yeah, I'd probably say there's more buzz around there. But even you look at people like Sofia Coppola, though, she kind of had not a career, but she had a lot of critical acclaim before Kathryn Bigelow's like reinvigoration of her career kind of came out. So, Sofia Coppola had Lost in Translation, all that kind of stuff happening early 2000s. I think Lost in Translation came out in 2003, but she was nominated for Best Director for that. And of course, there's also other people like Jane Champlin and other female directors who have been nominated for Best Director, but she's the first one to win the Academy Award for Best Director who was a woman. So
there you go, man. That's huge. That's pretty big as far as being a female director goes. But like I said before, even just being a director in general, like she's a pretty accomplished director.
Yeah.
And she's been working forever.
Yeah.
Like she goes all the way back. But before we check out her filmography, I want to ask you, what's your first encounter? What's your first film you checked out from Kathryn Bigelow?
All right. First Kathryn Bigelow movie was probably The Hurt Locker. That was the first one because that's right when I was getting into movies. And it came out the same year that Avatar came out. And it was nominated, had the big runoff, The Hurt Locker versus Avatar during that time. And me being the big Avatar fan that I've proclaimed on this podcast many times before, you check out our James Cameron episode. I felt very passionately about Avatar winning Best Picture, and of course, The Hurt Locker won, so I had to check that one out. But yeah, that was probably my first exposure to her filmography.
But also the fact that they're ex.
Well, they're ex. Yeah, they used to be married.
They used to be married, and they're competing with each other for the Oscar. I was like, that's hysterical.
Yeah.
Like that's just really funny.
Well, you also look at it too. Avatar, the highest grossing movie of all time, versus The Hurt Locker, which is actually the lowest gross, before Moonlight at least, is the lowest grossing Best Picture winner of all time. Lowest grossing Best Picture winner of all time versus the biggest movie of all time.
That's gnarly.
Yeah. So it's just a radical kind of. And the Golden Globes rewarded Avatar Best Picture that year when the Oscars gave it to.
Now, when people talk about Oscar stuff, because and you're also a big Oscar guy too.
Yeah.
People always talk about what's the worst Oscar picture. What's the worst winner to win the Academy Award for an Oscar for Best Picture?
Yeah.
A lot of people actually mention The Hurt Locker when it comes to that conversation. Besides Traffic, I think is another one that people like to say.
Crash, yeah.
Not Traffic, Crash. Yeah. But that's one that a lot of people mention. Do you agree with that?
The Hurt Locker? Not being the worst. I mean,
like one of the worst?
I wouldn't even put one of the worst.
Worthy of winning the Oscar?
I think it's worthy. I mean, I of course, Avatar meant more to me.
Sure.
But I think looking at it objectively, it probably is the better movie out of Avatar versus The Hurt Locker. Of course, that was also the same year that Inglourious Basterds was nominated, and a lot of people say that should have won Best Picture. But then we just had our Quentin Tarantino episode. And as I expressed, I'm not the biggest fan of Inglourious Basterds either.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I said it was my favorite Tarantino film.
Yeah. So I mean, either way, I think that the way that The Hurt Locker has had an impact on cinema, how it kind of took from cinema that was popular at the time, but also elevating it to a certain extent, I think is deserving of a contemporary Best Picture winner. I think this is the first movie that concerns the Iraq War that also won Best Picture too. So that's pretty, I think that's pretty significant. So I think I think to last year, I think all the nominees last year are worse than The Hurt Locker, not gonna lie. Maybe besides like Three Billboards and Dunkirk, but I definitely like, The Hurt Locker more than Shape of Water. Or what was the one with Gary Oldman?
Didn't you put Shape of Water in your top 10 here?
It was number 8. Yeah, but I mean,
I didn't even have it in my top 10.
yeah, but I mean, that doesn't mean that like I'm not hating on Shape of Water, but sure. I think The Hurt Locker is significantly a better movie.
Sure,
and that one at least, So I think most of Kathryn Bigelow's movies are better than a lot of people give them credit for. So. I have no objections to Hurt Locker winning Best Picture.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that question because I feel like a lot of people ask that. Hurt Locker also happens to be my first encounter with Kathryn Bigelow. Okay. Everyone's going to be like, what about Point Break? I was born the year Point Break came out. Really? Okay. So Point Break isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse when it comes to like watching 90s action films. I'm much more closer to the 2000s era. Because again, I was a child.
I caught Point Break like in high school. That's when I discovered that one just watching it like on TNT or some shit like that.
I discovered Point Break through Schmoes.
Really?
Funny enough.
Yeah,
it was
they're obsessed with it.
It was Miri and Sasha.
Yeah,
when they had their Point
Sasha
Break
Pro
obsession.
Yeah.
And I was like, everyone's keep talking about Point Break. And also because of freaking Finstock, Tom, when he was talking about the new Point Break.
Right,
I don't know
remake.
if you weren't around, but you were listening, right?
I was listening, yeah.
Yeah, and he was always trashing it and talking about the studio and stuff like that because he worked for that studio that made that remake. So I was just like, I got to check out this movie that everyone loves. So I rewatched it, and it's hysterical.
Hey, man.
Those are my thoughts on the movie, but we're going to get to that
later
on. I want to start out with what started her career, which is a film called The Loveless that she directed.
Willem Dafoe. That was Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, the guy that people on Schmo said that I looked like Willem Dafoe, like a young Willem Dafoe, and I was like,
I don't get that.
Damn, I take that person.
How do you look like?
It's like saying you look like Steve Buscemi. I'm like, whoa, bro, come on, man.
Don't insult Steve Buscemi like that, man. Don't insult Steve Buscemi.
But again, he's like notoriously known for having a look. I'm not gonna say anything else, just a look, right? But Willem Dafoe is too. He's known for having that look. Like someone on when I did my Death Note review with Emma, someone said they shouldn't have just put Willem Dafoe. He looks exactly like. I'm like, bro, that's messed up, man. They're like, just put Willem Dafoe in there. He looks just like a giant freaking death creature. I was like, damn, bro.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe.
That's cold.
That's cold.
But yeah, people said like I look like a young Willem Dafoe, and they sent a picture of this movie actually, The Loveless. And the first thing right off the bat when it comes to Kathryn Bigelow is her kind of doing westerns in kind of all her movies, almost all her movies, I feel, or like a western vibe, right? Because in this one you have the biker gang, Near Dark you also have a biker gang. Like it's very similar when it comes to the type of genre that she's trying to comment on, even though she's technically doing different genres. I don't know if that's something that sticks out to you when it comes to her filmography, but that's the first thing that stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's like some of her films are kind of like neo-noir, some of them, neo-western, like you kind of mentioned. And I think even some, her later films are almost like post-war, post-modern, like look at war, you know what I mean? And a neo-war to a certain extent. I don't know if that's like a real term, but might be invented film terms, guys. Neo-war. Let's hear if who follow me on Twitter, man? Leonard Moulton, man.
What?
Leonard Moulton followed me on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Dang, man. You're gaining Leonard Moulton and I'm losing followers.
Nah, man.
I swear, dude, it's funny because I my computer was acting up, so I restarted my computer, and then I went back on Twitter, and I lost like 2 followers.
Oh, man.
In the span of like a minute, I lost like 2 followers.
Was it like when they cleared out the bots or some shit? Or
No. Like when they cleared out the bots and everyone was talking about it, like I lost 100 followers. And I was like, I don't even have that many to lose that many.
I was gonna say,
but I didn't lose any. I don't think I lost any.
Yeah, I didn't lose any either. Yeah,
but I think it's just people are just tired of my tweets.
No.
They're like, this guy's alright. I'm taking off. It's also because I don't follow a lot of people. I'm pretty notoriously not following back a lot of people. It's because I don't want so many people on my Twitter feed, man.
Right.
That's just me being honest.
Yeah, man. I might have to deactivate my Twitter, man.
Really?
Yeah, I'm getting too much trouble on that.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about that, man. You got some Twitter battles, man. You went to war, Twitter war.
Yeah, I was like in the Hurt Locker right there, man. I was Zero Dark Dirty in the Twitter world the other day.
Yeah, I see. Man. I imagine Twitter war is more like a sword and sandals type of war. Where it's like sword and shield, like Gladiator, like Troy, like you're straight up pulling a sword out and you're having to fight off.
Right, and
all these people coming at you.
You got everybody in the stands like, kill him.
Yeah, seriously.
Him. Yeah,
everyone who likes the other tweets are like the picking a side.
Right.
Retweeters are like staging bets.
It's crazy.
Who's gonna win?
It's crazy how we like determine validation through like who gets more tweets in the argument. You know what I mean? But shit, man, that's how I have to take a lot of my W's. You know, like at least when I've been arguing with people. I put out a tweet the other day, people about Movie Pass. All right, just an innocent tweet. I just said that if you're a critic, you should give away your free screenings if you're gonna criticize Movie Pass, right? Because they're free screenings, right? Objectively, if you go to a press screening, you don't have to pay. That's the fact. Right, I said that. All right, critics got really mad. There's a good group of critics. We got some who were, I guess, really offended by the fact that poor people want to see movies. I don't know why. I don't know. that's always been this has been my thing, man. This entire time, like reading through all the whole thing since I tweeted that thing. I kind of look at that and I'm thinking like, damn, like, you know, all of some of middle America, you know, some of the more poor, less fortunate, you know, places in America, they look at Hollywood as like elites, you know what I mean? Like elitist, you know what I mean? And God damn it, like if you don't want to look like elitist, stop being elitist.
I was gonna say, as someone who lives in Hollywood and has lived here for a minute, they kind of are.
yeah. Like I'm trying, like, but I think people read it and misinterpreted what I was trying to say.
Sure.
And you know, people thought I was saying that, oh, the critics should have to pay for movies. Like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. People are like, oh, you know, critics can be poor too. Like, I totally get that. Like, I'm trying to be a critic. I'm poor, you know what I mean? I'm sure. And I'm literally paying a school $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year
to be a part of the poor.
Just to be a part of the poor, right? Like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, a job that doesn't pay.
I'm definitely on your side. Doesn't not having money make you pro Movie Pass?
Sure.
And of course, I get it. Like the customer service isn't good for Movie Pass, but
and a lot of the business strategies as well.
Right.
And it's funny because I was actually going to do it, man. I was about to jump in and pull up my sword and shield, and I was like, I'm gonna go to war too, and do some retweets and do some like comments on it. I was going to comment on it, and what I was going to say was that you're mainly talking about the type of critics who go on certain platforms and just start
riffing on it. Yeah.
It seems like it's not necessarily even like on Movie Pass. Like it seems kind of condescending towards the people who use Movie Pass.
How dare you want to see movies?
Yeah, and it almost sounds like they're saying like,
why don't you pay for a ticket?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't even get it. Like, why does Movie Pass? I don't get it. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
If you don't get it, you're a slightly elitist.
Right. Not slightly. You are an elitist.
You are elitist.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, oh, especially when someone says that, and they also happen to get free movie screenings.
Right.
It's like, right. I mean, I think that's mainly what you were saying. Is the people who are really shit talking Movie Pass? Because personally, I'm very not Movie Pass.
You don't even have a Movie Pass.
I don't have Movie Pass, and I'm very like cinema purist.
Yeah, you pay for everything.
I pay for everything, and I go to the most snobby theaters in Hollywood, and I'm really technically I'm not taking Movie Pass aside, but at the same time, I did notice the fact that it was a very certain tone that certain critics talked when they talked about Movie Pass. Right. It's the kind of tone of like, oh, these silly people need Movie Pass, and it's like,
yeah, and you know, and I'm looking online, I'm looking at all these people putting up, you know, business reports, all this kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay, like you know, the business model is not good, right? But like when you read some of the reports that are coming from more media organizations, they're just like ripping right into it. Like and you know, to me it's funny because when you look at movie websites like places like say like I'm not gonna cite the Wrap because that's not what I'm referring to, but like let's just say for example like the Wrap or like Deadline and they're putting out stories like that, it's very clear to me at least that the people who are putting money in their pockets are the studios and the theaters. And both the studios and the theaters hate Movie Pass. By transgression, we have to hate Movie Pass, right? And that's where my attitude was kind of coming from. Like,
sure,
like as critics, to me at least, I thought being a critic, it was putting the responsibility of having more film knowledge, more film access out there, and for people who can't necessarily afford to want to be critics or be filmmakers, have more access to more movies. I thought that could only be a positive, but I don't know, man. Yeah, controversial shit.
Shame on you, RB3.
Shame on me for wanting people to have movies and having an opinion, but hey, man.
Yeah, and I think most people who see what you were trying to say.
I think most people did understand what I was trying to say. Yeah. There's just some people who that wasn't, and it hurt a little bit because it was like some people like I not like. Some people I kind of cherish, man. Like some people not cherish, but like
you look
I value their
them.
opinion. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, you're not being considerate of the women or people of color. Like, what? It's not even like I've never not taken that into account for anything. I don't know.
Where did that come in?
Yeah, I mean,
this is like an episode of Atlanta, like Ban.
Yeah, it really was.
Whoa! Like, why you hate black people and women? It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
When did I say that?
Yeah, exactly. Yo, it's exactly how I felt. Man. I was just sitting at home, like reading these tweets, like, damn, man. I was trying not to respond, but some of them were just mad, like, damn, they're really trying to defame me or something, you know. But hey, I don't know, man. People check out my Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at RB3Schmoes. Give me some support on that.
Seriously,
tweet.
Go follow RB3 and follow me if you want.
Follow Ace.
I'm losing every follower.
Squad Leader Ace, right? Squad Leader Ace.
Squad Leader Ace. I'm losing all them followers, man. And I tweet out my Attack on Titan reviews and my Attack on Titan passionate. Dude, you got to see me every time I sit down and watch Attack on Titan. I literally am like a giddy child, and it gets like 2 likes.
Man, I feel you, man.
It's like I got my 2 likes, bro, for Attack on Titan. But
that's me whenever I tweet about like a rap album, like Travis Scott.
Exactly, right? Are you listening to the new album? Did you listen to it?
Yeah, Travis. Yeah.
Are you on that?
World, man, I've been loving it, bro.
I gave it my first listen. I always give an album my first listen. I need a second listen to give my full thoughts.
Yeah,
that's me on albums. Like I have to listen all the way through and then do it again.
Nah, I've been having that shit on loop for like the past 3 days, man.
Bro, you know what's funny? I was kind of losing my mind last night, blasting that at like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was hopping around my apartment just dancing, cause it's dope. It's dope. Sicko mode, bro.
Sicko mode with Drake.
Yeah, 6 shots that I took. Wet like I'm Book. Hey, Phoenix Suns, bro. Oh my God. Devin Booker, bro.
Okay, all right. I don't know about that.
I heard on my Twitter feed, because I follow like Suns stuff. I saw like someone made an edit of Devin Booker making like crazy 3-pointers, and they just took that line and repeated it on loop. So it was stuck in my head forever, man. And I was like, yeah, Phoenix Suns support. But yeah, that's our end of our Twitter discussion and rap album discussion. Let's get back to film and Kathryn Bigelow. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that stood out to me when it comes to her first 2 films, is the fact that they are kind of like about biker gangs and
what's about I think counterculture too. I think counterculture is a big part of it as well. And I think when we look through a lot of her filmography, prior to her more shift after the Hurt Locker, a lot of it is about people who live within countercultures, right? Who live within the subgroups and the marginalized. And for something like Loveless, which I watched most of it. I watched up until like the last 20 minutes of it. And it's a movie about bikers and just trying to live life, like 1950s life. William Dafoe's first part. But it's also, strangely enough, her being a woman, it also deals a lot with like masculinity, right? And I think that's the central theme throughout her entire filmography is masculinity. Masculinity presented through a female perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key in all her movies, regardless of who's the protagonist and who's not the protagonist. I feel like every one of her female characters is very deliberately written a certain way and portrayed a certain way, because she's very conscious of the fact that, she wants to write and direct female characters that are female characters and not stereotypes and not stuff that previous directors have done before, where they are used as an object or used as a goal or a plot point. Especially, that's the biggest thing, is a plot point. And she wants to make sure that they're written from a point of view that's actually from a female point of view, which does make a difference, because I've had conversations about that very subject when it comes to other films like Wonder Woman and stuff like that. I was like, why is got to be a female director though? And I'm like, it's a major difference. It makes a very big difference. Not saying that a male director can't direct a female-led superhero film. That's fine too. But I do feel like there is a slight difference, or a big difference, that it can make on a film. And Kathryn Bigelow brings that throughout all her films.
Right.
Is that female perspective on the female characters, which is very important for her films. Is there anything else that stood out to Loveless before we move on to Near Dark?
Nah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got on that one.
Now, Near Dark. Near Dark is a film that I heard about through JTE, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because I went on his podcast back in the day, JT Movie Thing. Shout out to JTE. And I talked about, for some reason, it was, what was the last movie you saw? And then I forgot what it was, but I saw a vampire movie. Oh, it was Blade 2, because I was rewatching Blade 2 with a buddy of mine who's never seen it, and I was like, you have to see Blade 2. Blade 2 is the shit. And funny enough, I just went on like an hour-and-a-half rant of vampire films. And we just went back and forth just talking about vampire films and vampires in general, and why I'm obsessed with them and why I want to be a vampire still to this day. Turn. Anyone who's a vampire, turn me. But
this guy, man.
Yeah, turn me, man. Come on. I don't need the light.
There will be blood.
Yeah, there you go. I need that blood, man. That's what I live off. It's like a Mexican vampire. Give me that blood, fool. But anyways, that's where I heard about it. And I hadn't seen it when he was talking to me about it. So I went over and Found it. It's difficult to find. Can't be honest.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's honestly it's starring Bill Paxton and Adrian Pasdar. Good old Nathan Petrelli for anyone who's a Heroes fan, or General Talbot for Agents of Shield fans out there. All the shows that all the shows that I watch, man. But it's starring them. But for me, it's one of, honestly, man, it's one of Bill Paxton's best roles.
Really?
Ever.
Okay.
Like in all his career. Which
Really?
is something big, you know. R.I.P. Bill Paxton. I love
Yeah.
Bill Paxton, and he's also in Agents of Shield. There you go. There's the connection. But he really, like, he plays like a psychotic vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your connection to the film is, so I'm kind of explaining.
I've never seen this one.
Yeah, so he plays like a psychotic biker vampire, and he's the crazy one. So everything he does, as far as like torturing people and like sucking blood and stuff like that, he like stalks his prey. He dances around. He has like fun with it, basically. Mm-hmm. And he's great, man. Like it's one of those things where you see these movies and you rewatch these type of movies, or even if you think about it, you start to feel a little sad because it's someone who you feel still had a future, Bill Paxton, and seeing his talent on screen and just throughout the entire film itself is very impactful personally, because I'm like, man, it's just a shame, right, that we have to lose people so quickly. Mm-hmm. Because you know, I'm very passionate and emotional, so I always want to hang on to people, and seeing his talent throughout this film, I was very much blown away. Right. And yeah, the film itself is really cool too. It's like a small little vampire biker gang that turns, one of the girls turns this guy, and that's also a big thing too.
Is it like the Lost Boys or something like that?
It's 87, 1987.
Okay. Oh, so probably like the exact same year almost.
I was gonna say, I don't know when the Lost Boys came, but the late 80s, early 90s, later 90s, that's when the vampire stuff came out, man. Mm-hmm. That's when the people were starting to open more things as far as vampires go. Lost Boys kind of started that too.
Right.
So it is kind of similar to Lost Boys in that sense. Mm-hmm. But as far as going back to the female characters, it's a female vampire who picks out a guy that she likes and turns him. So it changes that power dynamic of like Edward Cullen. Vampire.
Okay.
Because he's not a vampire, RB3. No matter
vampire.
what you tell me, bro,
hey,
he's not a vampire.
I read all the books, and all the books said he was a vampire, so I'm gonna say he's a vampire.
He's no vampire to me, man, and I'm a vampire purist. Anyways, so it's her power dynamic having over what she wants and what she desires, and instead of using him as food, basically, she turns him. And it's her decision that kind of affects the entire film, right? Because every other decision made throughout the rest of the film is kind of them going back and forth as far as decision makings. Does she stick with the biker gang? Does she help him out? And basically they take him in and start teaching him the ways of like the vampire ways. Right. And he's very hesitant to feed because he doesn't want to feed. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a very interesting movie. It's fun. It's a small little kind of horror movie. There's some horror stuff towards the end of the movie that has like cool makeup effects and stuff like that with Bill Paxton. Yeah, man, for me, it's a solid JTE recommendation.
Solid JTE recommendation.
Yeah, man. Like, and every time it's a vampire film, I kind of have to see it, like no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's like the ace rule. So if it's a vampire film, I'll check it out. That's why don't see Twilight.
Yeah, man. Twilight's dope, man. I love Bill Paxton in that one movie directed by Sam Raimi, A Simple Plan. A Simple Plan is a great film as well.
Dude, that's another one. I love Sam Raimi. We got to do Sam Raimi, dude.
Yeah.
I love Sam. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those movies that is the biggest thing that stood out to me. Funny enough, even though she's not necessarily the lead, it's Adrian who's the lead. Mm-hmm. But it's what she chooses to do with female characters in the movie, and powerful female characters, right? Because she's a vampire. Right. Yeah, so shout out to Near Dark, which is definitely a recommendation on my part.
All right, Near Dark. I'll be checking that out.
Have you seen Blue Steel, my friend?
Blue Steel. That sounds like a movie I saw on Reels TV back in 2009. My grandma used to watch that show all the time. By the way, did you hear about Steven Seagal?
No.
He's like the Russian ambassador now for like the United States.
Really?
Some shit like that, yeah.
Really?
Like Russia appointed him as like the U.S. Like it sounds like something out of a Steven Seagal movie.
That does not sound real.
Hey man, it's real. And then I get because I think Blue Steel is about Russia, the Russian something.
No, Blue Steel is Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays a cop.
I never mind it.
Yeah, she plays a rookie cop, and basically she's trying to make decision making again with a cop. And it's funny because it's once again a female perspective. And Jamie Lee Curtis is Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with Jamie Lee Curtis, man, the original Scream Queen.
So the reason why this movie stands out the most to me is because of that. This was like before the kind of female-led cop military type movies. So
G.I. Jane.
Before this, I think this was before G.I. Jane.
Okay.
So I think it was. I don't know. I might be wrong.
I mean, G.I. Jane came out like 2000. So this one's like 1990.
This was 99. I mean, I'm sorry, 1990. Yeah.
1990. Yeah.
So for me, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me is taking a central lead, a protagonist, and focusing the story on her, and combining the talents of a Kathryn Bigelow and the talents of a Jamie Lee Curtis to create a compelling and truthful presentation of a female cop, trying to decide what to do and what types of decisions are going to affect her career and her life and her perspective, right? And it's very interesting for that point mainly. So for me, it's something we didn't talk about when it comes to the previous two films is how cinematic, that's a word, and that's a James Cameron word, as far as how cinematic Kathryn Bigelow is. I don't know if you agree with that as well.
Yeah.
But her decision making with the camera, and I know it's a DP and not her necessarily, but her decision making with the camera is very, very specific and very creative, very cinematic. Like everything she wants to make, especially because she's coming from that 80s, 90s era, as far as how she made the majority of her films, was in that era. But yeah, I don't know if you would see that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think you see that the most in something like Point Break, right? There's something that's very highly stylized with a lot of moving shots. The camera never really sits still in a lot of places, and when it does, it's usually there's a point to it. You know what I mean? There's always a point to the motivation behind the way the camera moves. And you look at some of the other shots, like the car chases and the street fights, and not street fights, but the street chases in this movie are very handheld, very rugged, very gritty. Even for like a 90s action movie, so
let's do it, man. Let's get into Point Break. I kind of want to go back to your first time watching this movie as far as your reaction.
Yeah,
because you've heard of it before.
Yeah, I did. And of course, like being a Schmoes fan, I mean, that's all they used to talk about back in the day. So again, like it was just, I remember seeing it just randomly on TNT. I like just started like one evening, I guess it was like 10th grade or something like that. And I sat through the entire mug, and I couldn't have been like more impressed. You know what I mean? Like that, that is a movie that, like, of course it's funny to make fun of it and all this kind of shit. It's funny too. I was exposed to Fast and Furious before Point Break, so
you always heard about people saying it's a Point Break ripoff.
I mean, I didn't hear about that up until that point.
Oh, okay. That's all I heard.
Yeah,
watching Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't, because I guess I just never really cared to like make the connection. But it wasn't until after I saw Point Break, and then like kind of looked at the Fast and Furious again. I was like, oh shoot, this is like the exact same plot. But it's funny that this movie is so amazing that it can inspire like the biggest franchise, one of the biggest franchises in the world, just off tap. You know what I mean?
That's the power. You know who that's the power of?
Who's that?
Keanu Reeves,
man.
My boy, my homie Keanu Reeves. Yeah. I adore Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, this is one of his first ones, right?
This is one of his first. Yeah, this is one of his first ones. Because after this, he became an action star, and he's still an action star. I mean, the fact that he is, and he's one of the most compelling action stars. He's so believable in everything he does, and this movie is another example of how believable he is as far as being, the role that he is in an action film. Because this film is one of the most, if not the most, 90s action films.
Right. Well, I think it's probably one of the first. And it's funny when you look
That's true, because it's 91.
It's 91, and you look at something. You look at what also came out this year. The year this movie came out in 1991 was Terminator 2, T2, and this was also during the time that James Cameron and Kathryn Bigelow were together.
That's a battle, bro.
Yeah.
It's a battle of husband and wife.
And I heard something to the extent of like they would show each other like dailies, like day by day. So like she'll watch stuff from Terminator, he would watch stuff from Point Break, and I'm sure that competitive nature is only what elevated things to a certain extent. But you know, I guess we should also say too, like, we don't want to just diminish her whole career in the context of James Cameron. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
But yeah,
not.
but it's just funny that that's a coincidence.
It's just funny. I just think it's hysterical.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a battle before the Oscar battle.
yeah. And they're both. I mean, both ended up becoming big hits, including Point Break, which was a huge hit when it came out. And like we said, it kind of inspired this whole new. Because when we look at 90s action movies now, they almost take verbatim what Point Break had established, right? Like structurally and all that kind of stuff. And so the Terminator was also responsible for that aesthetic to a certain extent too. So it's just interesting looking at it that way.
What's your biggest takeaway of the film? Because I feel like there is a little bit, besides the giant generic action film, there is a little bit of a political commentary in the film too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of heart to it, definitely, and I think that's one of the things I found most moving about it is that it's a movie about this group of surfers who, again, it's another Kathryn Bigelow movie that's about a counterculture, right? That's about a subculture and a counterculture. Subculture and the fact that they're surfers, but a counterculture in the fact that they rob banks. You know what I mean? So they're actively working against the establishment, and they're representing this kind of like free spirited, you know, hippie, new wave, young generation versus something that's more older, something that's more established in like the FBI, and how those kind of ideologies that Johnny Utah represents versus what Bowie represents kind of come head to head.
Sure. And do you feel like there's, what I was mainly referencing was the whole masks, the fact that they choose to, especially with Reagan too.
Yeah. Reagan, Nixon, LBJ, and I can't remember the other one.
Yeah,
I think
I can't either.
Yeah.
The one that stood out the most to me was Reagan, though.
Yeah, Reagan,
because it's coming like
president.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's coming from that era, so it's a certain commentary on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I always just thought of it as like presidents taking our money away from us, which is true, people. Which is true. They're mostly Republican presidents, right? I mean, LBJ was a Democrat.
Sure.
I don't know. Was Kennedy portrayed in one of those masks, or
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I should like look that up before. But I did watch this movie recently, and I gotta say, like, for a action movie that come out during that time, it's still pretty impressive how awesome the action still plays out.
I was gonna say, I said it before, cinematic, right?
Yeah,
you can tell that with this movie the most, almost the most.
All right, when he's like burning the car, like in the middle of the car chase, like. And the whole he like flames up the joint. I don't know
the surfing shots, man.
The surfing shots,
walking out of the water.
Right. The skydiving.
Yeah,
we were just talking about Mission Impossible last week.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
the skydiving's crazy.
Yeah.
I just think it's so funny because it's so big and bombastic and slightly over the top, if not incredibly over the top.
Yeah.
That the whole movie I was just laughing because it's very much like that's the type of genre that she was trying to hit, and that's what she totally nailed. And I think it's funny too, like the fact that he's like former quarterback at Ohio State.
Johnny Utah.
Yeah. I'm an FBI agent. the one that made me laugh the most though was the scene of the shooting in the air. He's like, and he starts shooting in the air.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's classic, man.
Yeah, that's deep though, man. That's deep.
It's deep,
shit.
but
like,
it's funny. What saved it was Keanu Reeves, man.
Yeah, it's Keanu Reeves' performance, man. And Patrick Swayze too, man. R.I.P.
Patrick
to that
Swayze,
guy.
yeah, man. That's a good point. He does play a very specific character, and I love how the whole movie he's just like, I gotta surf that last wave, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, man?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of deep, man. Like the whole idea of like living your life.
Sure.
Like the whole ending where where were they, in like Switzerland or something?
I think it wasn't it Sydney, Australia? Australia. It's got to be Australia.
Australia. I don't know why I said Switzerland.
Yeah.
But when he's doing a big wave and he's going on that whole monologue about living, you know, basically about living your life, free spirit, all that kind of stuff, like I kind of felt it, even though it's cheesy, like I felt it, you know what I mean? I also really felt when he like shot the guy in the air, like what kind of decision you have to make? Shoot your brother?
I just imagine RB3 like just a single tear rolls down his cheek. There it is. He's like, and RB3's just one single tear slowly rolls down his cheek. He's like, man, that's deep.
Well, you know what's funny? When you talk about masculinity in Kathryn Bigelow's movies, this is the prime example of masculinity in her films, right? And how, you know, the relationship between Bowie and Johnny, you know, some people argue it's like borderline like a homosexual kinda,
that's pure love right there.
Yeah. So, and which also is a fascinating choice because when you kind of think about it, you know, the chick that Keanu Reeves, that Johnny Utah's dating in this movie,
I think her name is Tyler.
Yeah, okay. Tyler. Yeah.
Lori Petty.
Yeah. I mean, the way their haircut is kind of like, it's kind of looks like Johnny and Tyler kind of similar. And Bowie clearly has love for Tyler throughout this entire movie, has love for Johnny. I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't know what that's trying to say, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But there's definitely a connection there, I feel like, to a certain extent. And, yeah, I mean, you know, just the way it puts the relationship, like the brotherhood between, and even the partnership between Gary Busey and Johnny Utah is very strong, too. So it does portray very strong, manly relationships.
Gary Busey, man, that's another guy who, like, steals this movie.
Oh man,
every line he says is
two meatballs sandwich, 2 meatballs.
Every line he says, man, is like a straight up like laugh out loud.
yeah,
it's great. Yeah, man. Obviously, the actress who plays Tyler, Lori Petty, that's another one, man. That's a check mark of Ace Crush. Right there.
Yeah, she's super hot.
Ace Crushes, man.
Yeah, she's super
That's
hot.
Another one that I was like, oh damn, the short hair though.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie is it's a classic for a reason because it does fulfill all the tropes of what you expect, but it does it so well that people now are imitating it like all the time.
Yeah.
So, and it is kind of what came from Fast and Furious. And as someone who's a self-proclaimed Fast and Furious fanatic, hyper fanatic, how do you feel about that connection to it?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest thing about it. I mean, I don't think the Fast and Furious plots really took much more from Point Break beyond that point, you know what I mean? But beyond the first one, they kind of just went off and did their own things with it. But
do you like the first one?
I like it. Yeah, it's probably one of the lower ranked ones in my book. But I also like Too Fast, Too Furious. So you know, what does that tell people? So
right? I love Too Fast, Too Furious, man. Shout out to Tyrese. Tyrese.
Yeah, Tyrese. Yikes. Let's get that guy on some meds.
Tyrese Gibson.
Tyrese, man.
But he was cool in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, did he do the stop stare? He got that from me.
He's gonna be a new Terrence Howard, man. They're gonna replace him in every part now. Yeah. A darker brother. I know how you get darker than Tyrese. But.
Yeah, I saw a clip of that documentary they're doing of Paul Walker. I think they're doing it on some TV channel, maybe the Paramount Network.
Okay.
Yeah, R.I.P. Paul Walker, man. I love that guy.
R.I.P. man.
Yeah, that was a homie.
Yeah, wasn't he considered like play Superman at one point or something like that, or?
Yeah. That's actually something, and the fact that it's so, I mean, the weird connection now. Just talking about it, the fact that he was a surfer too, and that kind
was he
of
really
like
a surfer?
Yeah, like Paul Walker was like a super well known like he loved surfing, like he was a surfer. And the fact that it's a Fast and Furious kind of inspired a Point Break. It's weird. It's like a
Johnny
connection.
Utah to Vin Diesel's Bowie.
Yeah. So there's that certain connection too. Yeah, R.I.P. Paul Walker. I love that guy.
Paul Walker.
But yeah, I mean that's Point Break, man. It's the movie that everyone quotes. It's the movie that everyone loves.
FBI agent.
It's still great, and it gave Keanu Reeves the opportunity to give us his greatness.
Yeah, there'll be no John Wicks, no Matrix, no Midsummer Night's Dreams,
no Speed.
Yeah.
Speed, man, and Speed 2, Cruise Control.
I don't know about that. I actually never seen Speed 2, so I can't talk trash.
Oh, I've seen Speed 2.
Speed.
I can tell you stories, RB3.
Oh no.
But after that, she made a movie called Strange Days. Now, Mr. RB3. What is your connection to Strange Days?
This is a movie I just watched today for the first time, actually.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And this is probably one of her strongest movies when it comes to social commentary. Maybe not strongest, but it definitely has the most to say. This is a movie that I was watching. And, you know, when I watch movies in preparation for this podcast, I usually, like, if there's something that stands out to me as, like, hey, I should probably take note of this, like, I'll just pause it and then, you know, write it down and, like, keep it chugging, right? This movie I did that extensively with, unfortunately. So the runtime is about 2 hours and 20 minutes. It took me about 4 hours to finish it because there was just so much. You know, it had a lot to say.
I mean, the first thing, the cast, right?
Yeah, cast, Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett. I don't really know who else. Tom Sizemore is also
in this. What's her name? Juliette Lewis?
Juliette Lewis did her own singing for this part. She plays like
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Vincent D'Onofrio. That's right.
Younger Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, right. This movie takes place slightly in the future. Takes place in 1999, so just 4 years into the future of 1995. Which is funny because really, I feel like if this movie was literally set like a few years later, it probably would be the most accurate sci-fi prediction movie of all time, because this movie really does get into the nitty-gritty of what VR is, essentially, right? This movie is all about this Ralph Fiennes character. He invents this thing called the squid. It's this thing you put over your head. It's not like a VR mask where you have to cover your eyes, but you just put this thing on top of your head and play like this tape recorder. I don't know, it's from the 90s. But it's basically like VR, right? Like you're transported in, but you're watching somebody else do, have their interaction. So he'll sell these little squid things to people, and people will just record themselves doing day-to-day life. And because he owns all of them, he could just watch them back himself or whatever, It's like not like it's not regulated. It's just kind of illegal. He's doing it under the table. Anyway, but it's just big commentary on how like video games, how technology, how we became overly obsessed with that and use that as a distraction for distraction from the real world, because outside of this VR kind of lifestyle he's living, the world's very much impoverished, right? Like it takes place in 1999 Los Angeles. Is very much a police state. It's very much like everybody's weird and kooky. The counterculture, as we kind of talked about previously, is kind of heightened to a certain extent, where gangs are a lot stronger, and there's a lot more people speaking out against the government, stuff like that, right? Including there's this one rapper that they portray in this movie called Jekko One, who is supposedly this very controversial political rapper, who ends up getting shot in the streets. And it has like obvious implications to people like Tupac and Biggie. This is before Tupac and Biggie were shot. But as we come to learn throughout the story, he was killed by the police. And it's very much a movie about police brutality. It's a sci-fi movie, essentially, set in the future, but about police brutality and how the effects of police brutality can affect a lot of people. This movie takes a lot of its aesthetic from the LA riots, because it was conceptualized during the LA riots. And back in 1991, as we talked about with Terminator 2, they're actually filming Terminator 2 while, like, across the street, apparently, from when the Rodney King beating happened. So, like, Cameron was always very close to James Cameron was always very close to the LA riots to a certain extent, and he's the one who like wrote the story and like produced Strange Days, as Kathryn Bigelow directs it. So it's very much a movie about police brutality. The chief in this movie, Chief Stregler, he's very clearly made to resemble Chief Daryl Gates, who is the controversial LAPD chief during the time of the LA riots and just during the time of the overly police state or whatever, and how the music counterculture is like the only voice of the people that could represent, because it portrays hip hop as like the voice for a lot of people, and even portrays like a not futuristic, but like a couple years in the future type of Compton that has like a lot of fireworks like popping off in the area, which is very accurate. And when I talk about it being a very accurate sci-fi movie, futuristic tale, some of the predictions it makes. I mean, there's one specific quote in the movie where this guy calls into a radio station. It's just background details, right? But dude calls into a radio station. He says, "So Dan, you're looking forward to your new year?" The caller responds, "Not really. I mean, what's the point? Nothing changes on New Year's Day. The economy sucks. Gas is over $3 a gallon. 5th grade kids are shooting each other at recess. The whole thing sucks. What's worth celebrating?" You know what I mean? Like and this is supposedly set the day is New Year's Eve, 1999. But you look at this passage today, you think this is something that somebody will be actually saying in today's generation, right? Sure. So it's very relevant. It's probably one of the most relevant science fiction movies I could think of. So
yeah, I mean, the fact that it's 1995, that's like peak LA police brutality. Mm-hmm. Like just coming off the LA riots.
Right after LA riots, yeah.
When was
OJ?
I was gonna say the OJ trial. When was that?
So like 94 or something like that.
Coming off the OJ trial. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you heard about the police and that.
Right.
Like you were hearing a lot about the Los Angeles Police Department being very much pro let's beat up some black people and let's be super racist, because that's just what we do.
Right.
And funny enough, it's a precursor to eventually what she did in Detroit, right, which is all about police brutality and kind of the spark of that. So that's incredibly interesting, incredibly fascinating. I need to see this film now.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how much it goes into, and it, you know, the whole reason, it's kind of similar to like today, right? Like how the only reason why police brutality has existed all throughout time, the reason why it's become such a big movement now through like Black Lives Matter, is because we have the technology to video it, right? In this case, the only reason why this revelation that the police are behind this guy being shot is because of the footage that was obtained when the guy was wearing the little VR type deal, I'm sorry, the guy who
was looking at it.
Yeah. There's a female who was looking. It was a female who was like a prostitute who was hired by the manager wearing one of those deals, and was like recording the whole thing. The whole reason why this rap star, Jakero One, was being surveillanced is because his manager was like is keeping tabs on the rapper that he's managing the entire time, because his main interest is within the talent, right, within the culture, and trying to keep his money together, which I think is also a very relevant point, especially when you look at somebody like you know, I don't know if you watched The Breakfast Club, but like they recently had this dude on his name's Lear Cohen, and he's he was the head guy for 300 Entertainment, so he represents like, well, he's the label head for rappers like Young Thug, Migos back in the day, Rich the Kid, all this kind of stuff. Now he's the head of YouTube Music. But anyway, the Breakfast Club kind of asked him like, yo, what's your opinion on, you know, like rappers who are taking drugs and kind of killing themselves, you know, to a certain extent, you know what I mean? And, you know, his kind of summarized answer was like, hey, I got to eat too, you know? So he doesn't, for him being a label head, he has no regard for the lives of the talent that he represents. He's just trying to get his money. I think this is also a commentary on something that was being said here too. So there's a lot. There's a very powerful movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive you know, hip hop nerd. And I'm slightly older than you too, but I remember the time when, it's so funny because I just came off listening to the Travis Scott album, and it's so funny how throughout time people have tried so freaking hard, man. I'm telling you, especially early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, to make hip hop clean. Make hip hop clean. Make hip hop not about drugs, not about this. And listening to Travis Scott's album, I'm like, oh, this ain't working, bro. Because all he talks about is drugs and stuff like that. Right. So I just think that's kind of funny, thinking about those two things to make that connection. But yeah, I'll have to check that out. I do listen to Breakfast Club sometimes, and sometimes I'm with Charlamagne, sometimes I'm not with Charlamagne.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I mean, yeah, he has a whole set of allegations. They were cleared recently, so I guess they had a DNA kit that came back that proved that he was innocent to some of the things, you know.
Sure.
He's still a scummy piece of shit, so I don't really want to support Charlamagne, but
yeah,
it was just fascinating.
Yeah, you know my thoughts on Charlamagne. I think I've talked about it before.
Right.
But either way, yeah, I mean that sounds crazy, and it's one of those things too where you see, maybe we will get that kind of technology when it comes to the kind of video recording. And it's crazy now too, because when you think about the police turning off their body cams, even that's like something that's, you know,
right.
Even
right.
wasn't that recent with the guy they shot in the backyard, right?
Right. Yeah, they shot they had other cameras, and I think the audio was still on for it or whatever too. So
gotcha.
But yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think something like Strange Days is interesting. It might not be like, because it's kind of toned as a film, it's kind of tonically like all over the place to a certain extent. So it's not really the most highly regarded kind of film, but I think out of all of Kathryn Bigelow's movies, it has the most to say about police brutality, also about technology, also about the future. It's another cyberpunk movie that took a lot of influence from Blade Runner, and it's another one that kind of took used a lot of that aesthetic and modernized it to a certain extent.
And it's like a precursor to The Matrix too.
Yeah,
which is basically coming off that too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the whole cyberpunk genre. Terminator is also another one that was, you know, of course, inspired by that too. So
Ghost in the Shell. Shout out to Ghost in the Shell.
Right.
Yeah, that was a cyberpunk. Cyberpunk, man, I love that. That's great. The next two films are K-19, The Widowmaker, and The Weight of Water. Do you have any connection to these two films before we talk about The Hurt Locker?
No, I don't really know. I mean, I think these are the movies that people kind of recognize as like Kathryn Bigelow's not downfall per se, but like, you know, not upswing. You know,
come on, man. Sean Penn though. Sean Penn's
great. What was the one when he played the slow guy?
Oh, that's the one with Tom
Dakota
Cruise.
Fanning.
Oh no, I'm thinking of a different one.
He has one with Tom Cruise.
Wasn't it Tom Cruise that he played? What's the famous one? The one that
Rain Man.
Rain Man.
Oh, that's Dustin Hoffman though.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Sean Penn does play a slow guy. Everybody, I'm not like making that up.
Dang, RB3, you're cold, man. You're cold-hearted, bro.
At least I didn't say like the R word. I mean, shit, you know.
I'm just messed up, man. I'm just messing with you.
Dakota Fanning's his daughter in that movie. I can't remember what it's called.
It's funny because K-19, The Widowmaker, is about a submarine. And funny enough, I know we're gonna stop doing this eventually, but the James Cameron connection. Right. And this came out in 2002. I just think it's funny because if you know anything about James Cameron, when I was reading up on him when we did the James Cameron episode, which you guys can check out, he's just so obsessed with underwater stuff. It's crazy. Like he's obsessed with deep sea diving and all that stuff. So I just think it's funny how there's like even that kind of connection when it comes to that filmmaking. But it stars Harrison Ford, man.
Harrison Ford, Under Siege.
Yeah. What more can you say, man? Harrison Ford. Fortunately, I still haven't seen the film. So I feel like we have the most to say about The Hurt Locker mainly. So let's jump over to The Hurt Locker, which again we already said is the first film that introduces Kathryn Bigelow. Did you see this one in theater, by the way?
No, I caught it on back in the day. Blockbuster was still around.
So this one, you know, it's funny because the first thing we talk about is cast and Jeremy Renner. This is the big launch, I feel, of Jeremy Renner.
Oh, definitely. Well, I think most of the people in the cast. Like
when
Anthony
did The Town
Mackie,
come out, too?
The Town came out in 2010.
Okay, so this is before The Town.
Yeah.
Because I feel like those two films, and he was nominated for both, right?
He was nominated for Best Lead Actor for this one, Best Supporting Actor for The Town.
It's a 2-time nominated Hawkeye.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, character actor. Man, I've been saying this the entire time, man. People got to put some respect on Jeremy Renner's name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking to my brother, and I told him, like, I'm telling you, man, Avengers 4, Hawkeye's going to save the world.
Yo, man.
He's going to be the one to kill Thanos. Everyone's going to be like, what do we do? And Hawkeye comes in, going all crazy. It's going to happen, man. Just wait. Just wait.
You think Hawkeye lost his entire family, like, during this time? Like, fucked up, man.
Hey, man, that's messed up, bro.
That could be what broke him, man. That could be like, hey, man.
He goes off.
Yeah, man. I want to
kills Thanos.
Yeah, dude. He'll
rips the Infinity Gauntlet and takes it for himself.
Yeah, no. He does. He like shoots an arrow through one of the stones and pulls it right out. Like that's how it ends right there.
I'm telling you, man. I'm actually. It sounds like I'm joking, but I really do feel like Hawkeye is gonna do something crazy important in the final Avengers film.
Yeah, I got a new theory though, man. I got
right.
a new theory. I think for Infinity War, you remember how, or for the Avengers 4 or whatever, you know how Tony Stark used that technology in Civil War in the beginning, where he like recreated like his parents or whatever. Yeah. I think he's gonna do that, but like he's gonna use it, but he's gonna like trap Thanos in it and make it like Gamora and bring Gamora back, and then make Thanos all sad and shit. Like,
and he's gonna regret it.
Yeah, because isn't that something weird to just introduce in the movie? Like,
I guess, yeah, I could see that.
They got to use that because I mean, you saw those deleted scenes from.
I did.
And how you had the Reality Stone, you know, Justin, you know, people, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be the same thing. It's like Tony got his own Infinity Stone, you know, his own Reality Stone here.
There you go. You never know. RB3 theory.
Opinion.
There you go. Back to The Hurt Locker.
Back to The Hurt Locker. I don't know how
Anthony Mackie. You're right.
Anthony.
Yeah. She likes Anthony Mackie.
She's collaborated with him.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah,
with Detroit as well.
Detroit as well. Yeah, you're right. This is kind of like that. I remember when it won the Oscar too, and they interviewed Jeremy Renner and Anthony Mackie after the film, and it's pretty funny an interview because they're clearly intoxicated. But they're going nuts. Like they're going crazy over it. But yeah, this one. It's definitely got a lot to say, and it's definitely the word gritty gets thrown around a lot, but it's definitely the gritty type of Kathryn Bigelow film. Mm-hmm. Once again, still one of the things that stands out the most in this film is the camera work.
Right.
And this
is a different kind of, because you know what Kathryn Bigelow is known for, you know, up until this point is having a very fluid camera. you know, especially when you look at movies like Point Break and Strange Days, those are movies that very frequently use, you know, steady cams, whip pans, like all of these kind of maneuvers to keep the camera active. In this film, the camera's moving all the time, but it's shaky, it's static. It feels less like a movie and feels more like a realistic documentary type of subject, but still heightened through the camera work in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get to Detroit, but that's Detroit is like the handheld stuff in Detroit is crazy.
Yeah,
like it makes me dizzy.
Yeah,
because it's like basically all handheld, which kind of is the point of that, is to get inside the face and get in your face and make it really extra like
gritty
and shit's going down and this is crazy and this actually happening type of stuff, from the camera work. And this one really has a lot to say about the war itself and how the soldier's relationship with the war can be the catalyst that kind of creates it in a way. Well, it supports it, right? Where it's basically at the end of the film, it's Jeremy Renner's obsession with doing his job, and it's Jeremy Renner's relationship with this ongoing war and this ongoing patriotism to, you know, do what you need to do, and that risking your life type of stuff it's almost like a drug for him, and he needs to do it all the time, even to the point of like not neglecting, but like if he had to picking it over his family type of stuff. That's the biggest takeaway I have from it. But yeah, because it's one of those things where people assume, you know, people in Hollywood and stuff assume, you know, soldiers, you know, against their will, or they don't want to be there, they don't want to be shot. But some soldiers are like, nah, bro, this shit is lit.
Some people go to the military to find their purpose, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they find it there, and that might be one of the cases. I know this movie received a lot of criticism though from like people in the military, for saying that they this movie to a certain extent like over romanticizes the idea of like, you know, having gone to war and like, you know, having this sort of like overly obsession kind of thing, like, you know, because to a certain extent it's almost like Jeremy Renner, like he almost has a death wish to a certain extent, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And he definitely endangers a lot of his team throughout this movie, and he's kind of an asshole in his own right, but it's his determination that we like seemingly get behind throughout this entire thing. I like I like this movie a lot, and I think part of it is because it doesn't really involve itself in politics. A lot of people will see that as like more like a propaganda kind of deal, why it doesn't have a position on the war per se. And I think it's very much possible for a movie like this to not have an outright political opinion, but still have a position on the war. And I think at the end of it is just saying that the war is endless. You know what I mean? Like, we're always going to chase something. We're going to keep moving the goalpost to find something to look for, right? Like, you know, this movie set in Iraq, which is a country that we invaded, you know, for seemingly no reason. But, you know, we're sending soldiers over there to fight, you know, because the president, you know, either Bush, you know, or, you know, even Obama to a certain extent, like, because we're telling them to fight. You know, there's no real, like, we're Al-Qaeda's pretty much eviscerated, you know, like today at least, you know, ISIS is pretty much gone too, but we're still in war with, you know, we're still fighting in 8 different countries, or dropping bombs in 8 different countries. Lord knows how many ones we have like soldiers for, you know what I mean, right now. But yeah, so, but it's just, I think this movie has that whole like, yeah, what's really not really, it's not what's the point, but it adds a little moral ambiguity to what we're actually doing. I think it's very effective in that fact because it kind of zooms in to more of the personal lives of some of the people that these bomb squads and the wars is affecting personally, because you get to meet the kids in the neighborhood, you get to meet some of the people, and you get really connected to them. So you feel really hurt when you think the kid's dead, or when you think, you know, some of the locals that we've become familiar with, you know, is, you know, are affected by this. And I think that definitely makes it say a lot more than some other movies that portray the Middle East as kind of like this faceless monster, right? You take something for, you know, compare it next to something like American Sniper, where all of the Middle Eastern guys, or all of the enemy is seen as bad. You know what I mean? We have to kill the enemy. Same thing with 13 Hours, right? Like, you know, the rest of the world doesn't really have a perspective. It's solely projected through the American's perspective. Same thing with like Lone Survivor. All these films have a very specific American perspective. This movie adds a little. This one definitely does have a specific American perspective, but it adds a little more of a face to the other side of the coin. So,
but yeah, but I feel like it's also the issue itself and his expertise itself is even a commentary within itself. The fact that it's IEDs, the fact that it's bombs that are put to basically be tripped up and cause enormous damage, as much damage as you can. That is essentially within itself the most. I'm watching My Hero Academia a lot, and it's shout out to My Hero Academia, but it talks a lot about the whole point of the show. It talks a lot about what is hero, right? Because we imagine hero as like someone punching another guy and punching another guy down, but if at the core of heroism or heroism, it's saving. That's the biggest thing, right? Even more than winning is saving. But that's essentially his job. And the fact that saving requires putting his life on the line, like you said before, it's almost something that he needs, right? That he has a death wish, that he needs to put his life on the line. But yeah, that's an interesting point, because there is a lot of movies on the Middle East and on, these topics and these type of war films. And it's interesting seeing these movies like American Sniper and 13 Hours after this movie, and seeing what is being said and what is being told as far as what the perspectives are. But at the same time, yeah, you're right, because we do meet a little bit more of the people there, and we see the relationship they have with the military too. And I don't feel like it's necessarily a negative commentary on the military. I don't know if you feel like it is.
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I think this movie is very respectful towards the military, very pro-military. So I don't think it's necessarily pro-war, anti-war. I think it adds a little more context and a little more color to the war, right? Adds a little more ambiguity as to deciding if, whether you think whether or not, these guys are doing the right thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, man, like, the danger of IEDs are, like, crazy, man. Like, that's basically declaring war on your own people. Because you don't know, you try and get Americans to trip it up, but at the same time, you don't know. Like, you're just setting this shit up and just trying to cause as much damage as you can. It's terrorism 101, right?
Right.
So at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, you can't really take that side either, because it's messed up. And it's one of those things that, watching shows like Narcos, where they talk about terrorist tactics that, these drug cartels took, because they're taking terrorist tactics, and one of the biggest ones is IEDs and car bombs and stuff like that are the biggest things that, if you want to really show your hand as far as who you are as a human, this is the type of shit that is like evil right off the bat. So it does make him the hero, but at the same time, I feel like this movie is more of a character piece than anything else on Jeremy Renner's character, and just following him along this journey and this lifestyle and this stuff that he has to do for a living, and it's one of those movies where you don't see that he's necessarily all there, if you know what I'm saying. Kind of like, not quite to the extreme of something like a Nightcrawler, but it's almost that similar aspect of like seeing a character going through something with that character and seeing kind of his two sides, as far as like, he does this, but he also does that. But he's also not fully there. You can also tell there's a little twitch in his eye that says, come on, man, you need to chill.
Loose.
You need to chill out, bro, and just chill with your family and go home. But yeah, that's why the movie stands out the most to me, is the Jeremy Renner character and what he's going through.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who kind of criticize him, this character at least, kind of for being, or for some people criticize a lot of this movie for the military, just like inaccuracies of it, right? Like how, sometimes he's, for the most part, he's supposed to be this, was it IMDs or IMD bombs?
Yeah, IED bombs. I forget.
Bombs.
There's like a name for the people who do it, though. I forget.
I don't know, but he's a bomb squad dude.
Yeah.
And there's also points in the movies where he's, seen sniping people. There's also points in the movie where, he's like going on like low level spy work. So there's a lot that some military people. There's a lot of reasons why military folks like aren't the biggest fan of this movie. But one of the reasons is that they kind of seemingly paint this guy as like this kind of super soldier who could just like hop from place to place, city to city, and just like kick ass, you know. So that's one of the major criticisms, at least, that I caught from that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless you're like in other movies, unless you're like a Navy SEAL or some shit.
Yeah,
because American Sniper is specifically what I'm talking about.
Right.
But speaking of Navy SEAls, her next film, Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30, yes.
It's all about Navy SEAls.
Yeah, SEAL Team 7.
SEAL Team 7
in particular.
Yeah. Now this one, I'm curious, what was the reaction as far as the military for this one? Because I feel like this one's pretty pro-military.
This one's pro-military, I think. I mean, I think this one is, but you know, there are a lot of people, surprisingly, I think on the left side of the spectrum, left side politically, who like criticize this movie for reasons that I don't understand. So it's just, I think a lot of people are really upset for this movie for its portrayal of torture, right? That was the big thing of it, right? The big enhanced interrogation. And there's a lot of people on the right who are, of course, like, oh, like torture, that didn't happen, you know. But there's a lot of mainstream media, a lot of people on the left who are also upset of the portrayal of torture in this movie, which is funny to me because I think torture is actually happening. I think there's been confirmed. The whole thing with this movie, the whole thing that happened with this movie is that Mark Bowl, and who of course wrote Hurt Locker and wrote Zero Dark 30 as well, and Detroit, he was a journalist in Iraq, so that's where the perspective he wrote for the Hurt Locker. For Zero Dark 30, they have been developing this movie. He had been developing this story and the screenplay for over 6 years, pre Bin Laden dying. So when Bin Laden died, they had to change the entire script and all this. But the perspective that he brought from it is having CIA connections who gave him information about the whole situation, and you know, from the CIA's perspective, you know, they engaged in enhanced interrogation, right, or torture. A lot of people are saying that the FBI, but you know, after the movie was released, you know, of course they have to deny it because you can't just say you're torturing people. So they're like, oh, we didn't do torture, but clearly, like, we know for a fact that the CIA does torture. Like, that's not a thing. And George Bush has even said on multiple times that, and he even told, you know, the media to not call it torture. He's the one who encouraged the term enhanced interrogation. So that's the big controversy around Zero Dark 30. Is it just the portrayal of torture, how effective it actually was? Because there are some people who are criticizing it not for portraying torture, but for not portraying enough torture, or of how, you know, in this movie it seems like, you know, you torture somebody and boom, you get exactly what you needed. In real life, you actually torture, you know, according to, I have no military expertise, but a lot of people say, yeah, you have to torture a lot of people just to find what you're looking for, right? So I don't know. It's just interesting. That's kind of the big thing about it is the whole torture aspect.
Yeah, that's to be honest, man, that's the thing that stands out the most to me.
Yeah.
So full disclosure, I've said this on the Schmoes before, but one of I took a date to this movie.
Oh.
And this was our first date.
Wow.
And I had no clue. I thought it was like a fun little war film. I had no clue. Let's just say during that scene, I was like, no. Yeah. I blew it because it's like, oh, who takes a date to see a torture scene? And it's so like thinking back about it, I was like, oh my God. And I prided myself as being like a movie buff to her too. I forget when this movie came out. 2012. But like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm a movie buff. I know these. Like, I can, if it's good, I can tell you if it's good and stuff like that. And she trusted me to take took her to this. Oh, I didn't know. I swear. But that's the thing that stood out the most to me.
She might have been into it, man.
I hope not. That's awful. Jesus, that scene is awful, man.
Wait, what happened? So what happened? Did she like it?
No, she literally, I'm not joking, man. This is the stuff that is not a joke. 2 weeks ago, she just got married. I'm not joking. This is the type of stuff that happens, man. I mentioned it last time on another episode about the New Zealand girl.
Yeah. What was her name again?
I'm not saying her name, bro. I'm gonna get in trouble. I said her name on the podcast, and I shouldn't have done that. And now I'm trying to like bury it, erase it. What? Who? But anyways,
I'm gonna put it back in right when I ask. I'm just cut to the footage.
No, please don't. But anyways, my thing was that scene. I was like, damn, that's like. I don't know. That was the darkest thing I've seen on screen for a while, right? I mean, obviously now it's like I've seen so many other dark things, but yeah, I mean that scene stands out quite a bit for sure. Yeah. But at the same time, if you want realism, that's what it is, right?
Right. And this is like unadulterated realism, like, you know, and that's what, you know, I think even, you know, Mark Bowl and Kathryn Bigelow has said they referred to this movie as, you know, more of a piece of journalism, if anything. And, you know, there's also, you know, some controversy, in particular with portraying Jessica Chastain's character as Maya as the one person who was behind this whole operation finding bin Laden. You know, I guess in reality, of course, there's a lot of other people involved. But this is, for the sake of a movie, they kind of streamlined all of that into one character, in Mia, and this character who is based on a real woman in real life. But who also embodies a lot of other people as well.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a movie, so they condense the characters and they condense the events. Because, I mean, shit, this movie's pretty much like 3 hours, right? Like, it's already long. But, you know, a lot of people criticize it for not telling the full story, right? But how much of the full story can you tell in one?
Yeah, and I remember the thing about this movie that was the big thing coming out of it as far as the hype was the accuracy. And everything you just said before about the writers behind it is because of that. But the one thing for me as well is, obviously this is Oscar nomination for Jessica Chastain. Did she win?
She did not win.
Okay.
She lost to Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook.
That's right. RB3, your quick thoughts on that?
Nah, I mean, I think Jennifer Lawrence deserves an Oscar, and if she deserves an Oscar, it's probably for that movie. I just think that I like Jessica Chastain's performance more in Zero Dark 30 as compared to Jennifer Lawrence. But I definitely think Jennifer Lawrence deserves an Oscar. And if for one movie, it probably should be Silver Linings Playbook. That she deserves it for, but.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
I'm with you. But either way, besides that, Chris Pratt's in this movie.
Chris Pratt.
Hey!
Yeah. Another MCU star broken out in the Kathryn Bigelow film.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. But either way, the thing I want to finish on for Zero Dark 30 is the actual raid itself. On I don't know if it's officially called a raid or not, but the fact that that scene is very specifically telling you what the military or the SEAL team is like. I mean, they're super quiet, but also super trigger happy.
Oh yeah. They're emptying clips on people.
I was like, damn, that's realistic. And the fact that the whole thing for me that stood out the most was the idea of this narrative that Osama pulled out a gun and it's all self-defense and shit. It's like dead or alive. And I was like, nah, bro, they went in there to kill him.
Yeah.
It was straight up killing.
They had no qualms with doing that. I mean, and you know, I remember that was a big conversation when bin Laden was actually caught. A lot of people were like, dang, she actually is killing like the right. Are we just going to be cool with just killing somebody? Like,
dude, that was the first thing that came to me when Obama gave that speech. And I was like, that's some bullshit. Like right away, I said it. I like literally said it out loud. I was like, that's not true. Because didn't he say it's like in order of the pulled out a gun or something like that was said?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not true. I can tell you that right away. And I'm not even in the military. They were not trying to put him in cuffs.
They weren't like negotiating.
Yeah.
Man.
No, man, they went into to kill him, which in my opinion is the right thing to do. But it's also a bigger question because if you remember that, if you put yourselves back in your shoes when that happened. You remember the craziness around that? Like the celebration around that? And like people were celebrating in the streets and stuff.
People were losing their minds.
And the first thing that came in my head, like just on a personal note, was just the idea of celebration over a death to me is gnarly. But if there's ever going to be someone you celebrate over, it's this guy. I mean, if you're going to do it, this has got to be the guy to do it. And it's also a question that I was talking to my mom about what's his face, XXXTentacion.
Yeah.
And is it right to celebrate someone's death? And I had a good discussion with her about that because I was like, probably not. That's kind of messed up. But when it came to this guy, I was it's like, yeah, let's celebrate. Why not? But yeah, that's the biggest thing to me is the fact that it's a mission to justice.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's justice, man.
Right.
And that's one of those things that I'm very, I'm pro justice.
yeah, no, I'm pro justice too. But I mean, you know, is justice killing the dude who's responsible, or is it putting him on trial? You know, because when you speak about X, I mean, you know,
I say bullet to the head, bro.
but yeah, when you speak,
that's what I say.
But when you look at somebody like X, right? Like he never fully went to trial.
Sure.
And guess what? After he died, the court dropped the trial, so he died an innocent man. You know, at least according, you know, at least in conjunction to the allegations, of course, not talking about what he said previously in some other interviews, but I mean, for the case of Bin Laden, at least, I didn't even know the whole story going into this movie.
Sure.
Like, I had no idea that they had an entire helicopter that crashed. That's crazy to me.
Oh, really? Didn't know that? I thought that was like a big thing.
I had no idea. I didn't know they crashed an entire helicopter to kill this dude, and they had to hide that shit. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and the fact that it was like the most high tech chopper ever.
Yeah.
So they had to
they
had to blow that shit up. Otherwise, it's like, bro, that's some crazy tech.
Yeah, it was crazy because after I saw this movie, I ended up watching a bunch of like SEAL Team 7 or SEAL Team 6. I'm sorry. Did I call him SEAL Team 7 before?
SEAL Team 6.
SEAL Team 6. That's what it is. I watched a bunch of like the documentaries about those guys like after seeing this movie. So it was just crazy, like learning all of that stuff. Yeah.
Really? I which one did you see? Because I want to see that.
Well, I think it was just called SEAL Team 6. It was on Netflix. Yeah, it was on Netflix or something like that. Yeah.
I think there's one guy that's kind of talked about it the most. I forget his name, but he's gone on shows and stuff and been interviewed. One of the SEAL Team 6
he's
members.
one of the SEAL Team 6?
Yeah.
Dang, I didn't even know they were like uncovered.
No, there's one guy that spoke out about it. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I think there's one guy who was like the representative. He took it upon himself to talk to the media and stuff.
Right. I think I know one guy of the SEAL Team 6 passed away, you know, doing another mission. So RIP to him, man. But yeah. No,
there you go. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like the craziness surrounding Navy SEALs, right? It's the most powerful weapon that the United States has is the Navy SEALs. So yeah, I mean, shout out to Kathryn Bigelow for doing that. It's funny because we're running throughout these films and we're seeing certain themes come up of like military and police and
authority
and that kind of stuff that comes up in all her movies. And the last one we're going to talk about is all about that with Detroit.
Right.
Now you famously, I remember this, came out pretty loudly saying you did not like this movie, right?
No, I didn't like this movie.
And this movie came out, I believe, in summer, right?
Summer of 2017.
And this one I remember because I follow award-worthy films, Oscar films type stuff. This one was getting some buzz, a little bit of buzz, and eventually didn't get anything.
Right.
It just died real fast.
When it came out, I think a lot of the buzz kind of cooled off about it.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
And it's also, I follow John Boyega on Twitter, on Instagram, I'm sorry. So he was posting a crap ton about it, but also like the cast and stuff, the fact that it's Kathryn Bigelow, the fact that it's the famous Detroit riots. Like this was Oscar bait, you know, wrapping around it. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this film because the biggest criticism I heard just through other channels was the over brutal of it, the over brutality of it.
Yeah.
Was that something that was the main reason why you?
Well, I mean, that was
did not care for it.
That was part of it for me. It was just a lot of violence for a little bit of substance, and that's to me where the movie lacked the most. It didn't really provide a lot of context to the events that were happening. So, you know, with a movie called Detroit, you think that, you know, if it's about the 1967 Detroit riots, you get a little more understanding of what led up to those events, right? But to me, I didn't think that was portrayed well enough. I mean, they kind of opened with like this animation cartoon that was inspired by the artwork of African American artist Jacob Lawrence, and you know, but it just by showing it in a cartoon, just kind of just like dismisses it, like, oh, the history is not really important, you know, and just kind of jumps right into it, and. You know, we studied this film in one of my classes last semester. You know, I was in this class called Race, Class, and Gender, and our Professor Todd Boyd, he had kind of said something that really stuck with me, that this movie probably is better presented as a documentary. If it was actually documentary, but it would probably be presented as a better documentary than a narrative film because it doesn't really have a story. It's just more of like showing you things, you know, but not really having a lot of insight into those events. So you know, like it kind of opens with all these different stories of looting, of people getting shot by the police, and then it goes to like the motel with all these guys, and it goes to another motel room, and it all kind of feels just so loosely strung together, to the point of, oh, the real concern here was just the intense brutality scenes, which, you know, some people would say, you know, is like borderline torture porn. So
you're taking words out of my mouth, RB3. I was gonna say that it's kind of torture porny. And funny enough, it's Kathryn Bigelow, who we just talked about torture with Zero Dark Thirty. It is kind of torture porny, to be honest, because I just recently rewatched this film, and that's the first thing that stood out to me was like, yeah, this is some, we get it. Right. Like after like an hour and a half of it, you're like, all right, we get it. But at the same time, it's like one of those things as far as like the realism type of stuff.
Right.
Like, for the sake of realism, do you tolerate it? Do you accept it? Do you say, yeah, this is art? Or do you say, nah? You know what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, those are all vital questions. And for me, I mean, I think I would have been more accepting of this movie. We'll see. That's also the controversy too, right? This movie's very, you know, like I said, it doesn't really lack it lacks context, doesn't really have the substance, focus more on the violence from very violent director who's made violent movies in the past, clearly has an affection for violence, in Kathryn Bigelow. A lot of people question, is you know, her being a white woman, is that the appropriate choice to put in to direct something like Detroit, right? That's such an African American centric story. To me, I have no problems with her directing, only because, shit, think of somebody it's like Tyler Perry or Lee Daniels, like, I'm not gonna put, you know, an African American, a black dude who, you know, kind of makes shitty shit, over Kathryn Bigelow, who's this Oscar-winning director. Even though she might not necessarily have the cultural insight to tell the story, she clearly has some experience in it. But again, but that's probably where the problem is too, right? You have Mark Bowl, who's a white guy, Kathryn Bigelow, who's a white woman, doesn't really understand the bigger cultural impact that the 1967 Detroit riots had on the African American community in that region. Kind of just, you know, throws that stuff away and focuses more on the whole drama of the situation, right? The whole horror, the whole suspense, and even to focus a lot on the consequences too. Because I remember the ending of this movie was really long. Like, even after we finally leave the motel, it's like another 30 minutes of like, oh yeah, these guys are getting off. Guys are innocent. You got to watch the group perform at like a church now, you know, like it was like a lot. Which, by the way, they're based on that's the real music group, the Dynamics, who were trapped in the hotel. Actually, a real music group that was formed in 1964. And they were a real life soul group that was based in outside of Motown Records, but formed originally in Detroit, and they ended up making a Snoop Dogg song in the 90s. So
there you go.
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing about Detroit, right? Is the fact that this is where music was popping during this time, right?
Right.
It was going crazy. Like, I remember I grew up on like Motown stuff that my dad loved. So that's something that, you know, the film, I don't know, could have highlighted more, could have not highlighted more. It's up to them, obviously.
Yeah, I think they had a good serving of the music in this. They have some good performances. I mean, all the acting all around. This movie's very well directed, very well made film.
What do you think of as far as the camera stuff?
The camera, I mean, it's
that handheld, man. That's some gnarly stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's really rooting itself, like I said, in the realism.
Sure.
Almost like this documentary kind of style.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I could see it. I definitely didn't really enjoy watching it either on the big screen.
Am I the only one who got dizzy, or do I get dizzy easily?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I got dizzy, but I definitely felt like, all right, like, put it on a tripod for this one, please. But you know, it's also interesting. You mentioned John Boyega before. He kind of plays the black security officer who really just came over to help, but now he's seen as the Uncle Tom because he keeps trying to help the police, like, you know what I mean. And in the end, they end up throwing the blame on him instead of the actual perps, you know, instead of the actual cops who are actually doing the hurting and the killing.
Yeah.
So that's just like, it's just crazy to me that, I mean, it's just a fascinating perspective, right? Do you think, you know, if a police officer or a law enforcement officer is black, does that excuse him from being responsible for the police police's actions, or like you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's always a big question. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh man, don't ask me those questions. I don't know, because it's throughout the film. That's the question you keep asking yourself, right? Is it like someone on their side that's like, all right, this is some messed up stuff, and he's always kind of like, you know, throughout those scenes, he's like, oh man, this is crazy. Like he doesn't know what to do, or is it someone that kind of had a hand in it? I don't know. That's too big a question for me to answer. Because how do you feel like the film portrays it? Because I feel like the film portrays him to be a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah, he's sympathetic. Yeah, and he definitely tries to help the brothers out.
Sure.
I mean, he's trying to do the best he can do while also like not.
And that's based on a real guy too, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Melvin. I don't know his last name, but I think his name's Melvin.
Yeah, because I think they interviewed him for promotion for the movie. I might be wrong.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I might be wrong, but I think he was interviewed for promotion for the movie.
Oh, okay, interesting.
With John Boyega. Again, that's because I follow him on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of him, what do you think of him? Because this is him trying his hardest to stray away from
Star Wars
and big giant movies. This is him like, I got to try something else. Even he said it too. He's like, I got to do something that's not a big bomb, crazy blockbuster movie.
Right.
And I got to balance it a little bit more.
Right. No, I hope he does, man. I hope he puts in more dramatic performances. He was good in this movie, at least. Sure. So.
Yeah. We need more videos of John Boyega with like a bunch of girls booty shaking.
It's working on him. Yeah.
Booty shaking on him and stuff.
Yeah.
I still love someone on Twitter said something about that, and they were like, you're a part of Star Wars, man. You can't be doing that stuff. You know, Ray would not like this. You know, women support women. And he responds to it, retweets it, and he's like, Ray would be booty shaking too, man.
Hey.
We would be shaking that ass, bro. Hey. And I was like, that's the best response.
That's it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is dumb, man. People are getting mad for this shit. That's dumb, man. But either way, shout out to John Boyega, Anthony Mackie. What's his face? The guy who plays the super racist cop.
Oh,
like,
Will Poulter.
Will Poulter.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Will Sutton. Yeah, Will Poulter.
Will Sutton. Who's Will Sutton?
I was gonna make up a name and hopefully you would correct me. But he was gonna play freaking Pennywise, man.
Yeah, he was gonna play Pennywise.
Yeah, I remember that for the longest time. He looks like he's 10.
Yeah, he looks.
Doesn't he?
He started off as a kid actor, though, right?
Yeah, from the Road Trip movie. Not Road Trip. See, I'm keep making up stuff. The one with
I know which one.
Jennifer Aniston.
Jennifer Aniston.
What's that movie called?
I know, it came out in
Safety Not Guaranteed.
No, not that one. Nah, get the fuck out of here.
I keep making up.
It's definitely not Safety Not Guaranteed.
It's Peyton Manning. Now I'm playing.
Nah, I know. Who else is it? Somebody else is in it, too.
Jason Sudeikis.
Jason Sudeikis, that's right.
And Jennifer Aniston.
It's the same guy who directed Central Intelligence.
Yes.
Directed that movie.
Yes.
I can't remember.
That's where I know him from.
Yeah.
The most, and he looks like a child in every movie he's in.
Well, he's like a teenager in that one.
So. Yeah, but he's also in Maze Runner, so there you go.
Yeah, he is in Maze Runner, that's right.
He plays the asshole in Maze Runner.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Uh-huh. I only saw the first one.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, because doesn't he, like, die at the end of it? Spoiler.
I don't know, man.
Damn it. Everyone's like, oh, you spoiled Maze Runner, F you, man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And people were upset at you the other day for not knowing that Johnny Depp was in.
People were pissed. I got tweets and texts and calls, and it's like, "Hey, man, come on now!" And I was like, "Dang, I don't even know who you are, bro. How'd you get my number?"
You know, it's bad when our boss literally texts us in the group chat like, "Hey, don't."
That's the biggest takeaway. I was like, I listened to the whole thing. Come on, bro, Johnny Depp, man, come on. And I was like, bro, what about every other thing that I said? Controversial things. But yeah, I apologize. I didn't know. I must have fallen asleep in that movie too. Yeah, I did not care for that. So, whoops.
Film, man.
Either way, Zoe Kravitz. Shout out to Zoe Kravitz. But yeah, man, I mean, that's the biggest thing from Detroit for me was him just being a crazy racist cop and seeming like Kathryn Bigelow was like, oh yeah, just keep doing more, keep going at it.
Bug eyes.
Yeah, like if that's what it felt like rewatching this movie. I was like, yeah, I can kind of see like I said before, I was going to say torture porn before you said it, but you beat me to it.
I'm sorry,
the torture porniness of it. Specifically coming off like porniness? I don't know. See?
Horniness.
I don't know, man. I'm not a big, I don't like torture porn, man.
Hey, man, nobody should like this. Well, I don't know.
I don't know, man. I went on Vudu the other day because I got the digital HD of Infinity War.
Right.
And my brother was like, let's watch a horror movie. And I was like, sure. And he went to the free section because that's how my family works.
Right, yeah.
And we was going through all the free horror movies. They're all torture porn. Like we scrolled through 10, 12 movies, and every single one of them is about like some guy kidnaps a girl and stabs her with a knife. Some guy gets a chainsaw. Some guy gets a machete, and it's like all random ass B-level horror movies about torture porn. And I told my brother, I'm like, I kind of don't want to see torture porn right now.
Yo, what was the one that was that Robert Rodriguez had like produced or something like that?
Was it Hostel?
It wasn't Hostel.
That's Eli Roth. Hostel's Eli Roth.
Yeah,
that was on there too for free. Like there was like a torture porn section.
Yeah, I mean that's all of Eli Roth's filmography is torture porn.
Yeah.
It was the one. Oh man, I'm really trying to think. Hobo with a something.
Hobo with a shotgun.
Hobo with a shotgun. Did you see that movie?
No, I did not.
Oh,
that's with Danny Trejo, right?
Yeah, Danny Trejo. Yeah, and dude, there's one scene. I think like this chick like gets like a chainsaw to the neck or whatever, and like she's like trying to hold her neck down from like not bleeding, and like they're trying to rush her to the hospital. Dude, it's just crazy, man. Like, fuck, man. I don't know, man. I don't have the stomach for it.
I was gonna say like I have kind of the stomach for it, but I can't, man. I can't sit through that.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
That's where I draw the line. Yeah. But either way, those are. Is that the main reason why you didn't like Detroit?
Yeah, I thought it just didn't have the context I was looking for.
Sure.
I feel like
especially with the subject material.
Like if Spike Lee would have directed this movie, like can you imagine how like hard hitting political kind of commentary we would get on that? Like that would have been amazing to me. But it just didn't have.
Black Klansman, man. I'm excited for that.
I'm excited to see it. I'm seeing it the day this podcast drops on Tuesday, so I'm seeing it today.
I'm seeing it on Thursday, man. Yeah. So I'm right behind you. So I want to see that opening night.
Check our Twitters at RB3Schmoes, at Squad Leader Ace.
Squad Leader Ace, man, please. I'm losing all them followers. Follow me, guys, please. But either way, guys, that finishes our conversation on Kathryn Bigelow. Once again, let us know what your favorite Kathryn Bigelow film is. Let us know what is your first time watching a Kathryn Bigelow film. What's your introduction to her? What's your relationship with her? Either way, guys, let us know in the comments down below. That's the best way to connect with us. And then we'll probably read them the next week if it's a good comment. If it's not, then we probably won't. Either way, guys, for the Meaning of Podcast, I am Ace.
It's RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.